Jets 30, Texans 6. It was scoreless at the half. The Jets drop a 30 spot.
It had been 4 years since that had happened. A game went scoreless at the half, and then it happened twice in the same day.
We saw 2. Little side note here. I gotta pee. Just telling you. Normally on Monday mornings, I've got it well. I've got it well planned out. I don't drink too much.
Got an iron.
I have a really good water to coffee balance. We've got about an hour and a half left in the show.
Yeah,
we're gonna grind it out here.
Yeah,
we gotta grind it out.
Okay,
so that's all.
That's a great side.
Let's reset again for social media.
Yeah, you don't want that in the
Jets. Look, we're just full disclosure. We're full disclosure to our viewers and listeners. Jets 30, Texans 6. Jets move to 5-8. Texans fall to 7-6. The Texans could not take advantage of the Jags losing. They would have been tied atop the AFC South. As I said, it was 0-0 at the half. That had not happened how long?
4 years, something like that.
We had 2 in one day.
Yes.
Can't wait to get to that Vikings-Raiders recap.
The Jets have now also gone 39 straight games without allowing a 300-yard passer.
The Jets?
Yeah, as a defense.
Yeah. I mean, we said, look, first off, the Jets dropped 30 points in the second half. They win 30-6. We said on the preview show, I saw one commenter say, oh, you say everything's going to be tough for C.J. Stroud. We said this is going to be C.J. Stroud's toughest challenge.
And it was.
It was a weather game, but of course Zach Wilson was playing in that same weather. It was a weather game. That affected things, but yeah, C.J. Stroud finishes 10 of 23 for 91 yards. He had no interceptions, but he easily could have had 3.
Yeah. You know that weird thing where this week it's going to look, it's not as good, it's not as fun anymore. But the Eagles had one loss and it was against Zach Wilson, which made no sense, right? C.J. Stroud is having this MVP caliber season, and then he's been outplayed by Zach Wilson and Bryce Young.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense either.
Well, how about Zach Wilson this year, who's played horribly, has outplayed Patrick Mahomes and C.J. Stroud?
Yes. And now has been recentered, so is a superstar.
I cannot say enough good things about Zach Wilson in his performance yesterday.
He was really good. Was this his best game of his career? Has to be, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the
grades. He's had games where he's beaten good teams, but they've never been actually impressive Zach Wilson performances. This was an actually impressive Zach Wilson performance against a good defense, and he won.
From the get-go, Zach Wilson looked confident. I saw 3 throws from him. He looked centered. He looked confident.
Very centered.
He looked decisive. So I tweeted it early. I was like, I have to say this. I was saying this when the Jets had 0 points in the first half. I said, because it hasn't happened yet, confidence and decisiveness from Zach Wilson is through the roof right now. And it wasn't showing up on the stat sheet, but he's sitting there in the pocket. And in past Zach Wilson games, you would see him roll out and make a cool throw and everything. It's like, oh, there's some of the talent. But you'd say, Zach, could you at least just check down at the right time? Could you at least hit the easy throw? In this game, he did both. He was throwing passes up the seam accurately. He was double clutching a little hole shot, and he felt it, and he led a guy away from coverage. He did the roll left. There was some egregious, awesome throwbacks across your body yesterday across the NFL. Justin Fields had one we didn't mention. But Wilson rolls left, throws back across his body, a great pass to Garrett Wilson.
I was trying to work out if that was great or lucky.
It was great. It was outstanding.
Figure it out at the time. I don't know if it's because Zach Wilson, you're like, I'm less inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt than I would a quarterback that I've seen do that a lot of times. But that was the BYU play that's never been there in his NFL career. It's like that he did all the time in college, and then it just hasn't been part of his NFL game. He finally had one, and you're so shocked by it. You're like, where's that been?
If I'm assuming the spatial awareness is good enough that you got it there, and you deserve credit for it. So
now that you're centered, you can make those plays.
So centered Zach Wilson, goes 27 for 36 for 301, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the only real blemish, he has a 10-yard scramble where he fumbles at the end of the scramble.
That wasn't great.
Not a great play. He did get sacked a few times, but here's the other part of this, right? The pass protection was still terrible. The Jets' pass protection all year has been horrendous. And there were several plays where Zach Wilson's either just getting the ball out quickly enough that it didn't matter, or he was avoiding pressure, right? Some of those, on the dig to Garrett Wilson, if he had good pass protection, he probably would have hit the dig in stride, like within the rhythm of the offense. But because pressure came so quickly, he rolled out and then got back to it, and it was a really impressive play. So that was what I think I was most impressed on about with Zach Wilson. It wasn't like the Jets' offensive line and pass protection just stepped up in this game. They were just as bad as they've been this entire season, and it didn't matter. Wilson was unbelievable in this football game.
Well, this is the game. The question all season long has been, like, would it have made any difference if Aaron Rodgers was playing, because the pass protection, the rest of the team is so bad, like, it's non-functional anyway. Well, this is the game that's like, hey, no, if you get a really good quarterback in the zone, it can work. It works fine. Like, Houston's defense is good, and it got a lot of pressure, and Zach Wilson was able to overcome it and play like it didn't matter, which you would assume Aaron Rodgers is capable of doing most of the time had he been healthy and playing.
I'm not saying every Rodgers game would look like this, necessarily, like stat line wise, but Rodgers probably would have had a few of these games sprinkled in where the pass pro was terrible. He would still put up good numbers, get sacked a few times. I was just so impressed. And of course, stylistically, it looks like Rodgers, right? He's the jump throw type stuff, and the way he switches his feet and kind of, arm angles and the whole thing. I know there's definitely some announcers out there that overuse cliches. I've been overusing the confidence factor for quarterbacks lately. So I will happily admit that. But there's something to it. The way, again, the last few weeks, we've seen Jordan Love look completely different the way he's played football, right? Just decisiveness, knowing when he sees it, he's getting rid of it. The way Jake Browning has played the last few weeks. And now Zach Wilson, even if it's just for one game. This was real. This was a real one game. He had a half against the Chiefs, maybe a little over a half against the Chiefs. He also dropped a snap in there as well. But he had a half against the Chiefs where it was like, wow, there's something there. And then this game, there's not a lot to point to. But when it's been good, it's been good. And this was very impressive by Zach Wilson because he saw it, he threw it, he made special plays. But I think more importantly, he just made the plays that were in front of him and didn't miss that many easy throws.
I wonder if the Packers centered Jordan Love just quietly. They just didn't tell anybody about it. They just recentered him.
All of Rodgers' proteges have been centered.
It makes you wonder whether they should have recentered him earlier.
I mean, there was a lot of they should have.
Instead of waiting a couple of years. Like maybe if this was the problem all the way along, he's just been off center.
Maybe centered Zach Wilson is what they need. They don't need centered Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson's enough.
If
he's
centered
cheaper.
Zach Wilson is actually, the
Aaron
number
Rodgers.
2 overall pick and looking like the future, that's recenter the man right away.
I think I said this in the preview show. I probably said it about Zach Wilson and Mitchell Trubisky. I was like, you never really know with these guys if like the switch will flip, because Love was start 11 or 12 of his career, and look, Josh Allen showed a lot of positive signs in his first 2 years, but he wasn't that good. But by year 3, he was outstanding. He became a star. Like the switch flipped. You just never know. And again, I'm not trying to overrate one game. You just never know.
You're saying this is the Zach Wilson breakout? It's happened now.
I mean, the data would say that's unlikely. But this was a completely different.
Can you imagine if it happened?
We've also, the standards have been so low for Zach Wilson.
But this is
that when you see this, it's like, okay, this looks completely different.
Right. But this is different too. Like, there have been other games. Again, they beat Philadelphia. They beat Buffalo. Was it last year? Like one of his other previous, what the hell happened there games. But in those games, Zach Wilson didn't look like this. He just played well enough that the rest of the team didn't lose. That's effectively what happened in those games. This game, though, Zach Wilson played genuinely well and was a big reason for them winning the football game. In addition to that, that's why it was 30-6 instead of 12-6. It's like, hey, look, the Jets got another win that wasn't expected of them, and Zach Wilson didn't screw it up. This was different in that I don't think he's had a game like this before, where he's gone out, balled, looked really good, in addition to not screwing it up, actually made a ton of positive plays, and it was a big reason for the victory.
I completely agree. That's why I'm saying this. Like when the Kansas City game was real, something switched in that Kansas City game where he was playing kind of like this for about a little over a half. Last year when it was like a fake turnaround, he threw a game-winning screen against Buffalo and Josh Allen kept throwing the ball to the Jets defense. That was not a turnaround by Zach Wilson. This one looks completely different, and he did it for an entire game. So we'll see if he could build on it. Was very impressed. I know they didn't score in the first half, but I thought he was still playing well, and then they put up 30 in the second half. So I was really impressed. Also impressed by the Jets' defense. Of course, again, worst game of Stroud's career. He ends up getting hurt. He just got wrecked, man. Head hit the turf. He ends up leaving the game. Davis Mills had to come in. But all season, the Jets' defense, I know their corners are good. DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, the middle of the defense has been so good. I got to go back and rerun the numbers. It's like EPA per play thrown to the middle of the field against the Jets is so low compared to every other defense in the league. Their linebackers, C.J. Mosley made some plays. Quincy Williams is having a great season. All of the stuff that our friend Bobby and the Texans and the Shanahan tree, all that middle of the field that they open up schematically, closed in this game. And whatever it was with Stroud, when he would get back to his second read, not seeing a linebacker there. That's a turnover-worthy play. He was putting the ball in harm's way. The Jets' defense cracked down on this Texans offense really well.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that in the preview show, right? Robert Saleh comes from this system, like he knows what to expect. You also can't overlook, I think, the impact of the lack of receivers.
No
like,
Nico Collins.
Nico Collins lasted a couple of plays, right? And then he has a catch, hurts his calf, leaves the game, never comes back. So now you're down Tank Dell, who has been arguably their number one receiver in terms of connection with C.J. Stroud, and Nico Collins, who's been the number one receiver in terms of volume and just where the ball goes. So you take away his top two targets, and you've got the ghost of Robert Woods out there and Noah Brown, who's been great as a number 3 or number 4 option, but now one of those guys has got to be the number 1 option. The next two people on the depth chart in terms of just targets are going to be tight end Brevin Jordan, Xavier Hutchinson, the rookie, John Mechie showing up, Devin Singletary. Like, this is not the Texans' offense anymore. It's C.J. Stroud, who is still a rookie. It's PFF Bobby trying to call plays for people that aren't essentially in the game plan, right? That against arguably the best defense in the NFL. It's very difficult to overstate the impact that has.
Yeah, so I'm not going to – look, C.J. Stroud's had a fantastic season. This was a rough game. This was similar to his game against Northwestern last year in heavy winds and where he threw for about 70 yards. So, yeah, maybe the weather was a factor, but also I think the receivers and the Jets defense, you all added up. Impressive win for the Jets. And, I can't say enough good things about Zach Wilson and how well he played in this football game.
Centered Zach Wilson.
Centered. We got to do with and without centering.
I mean, if I had a struggling quarterback, I would immediately think about centering him. Maybe Bryce Young needs a week off to go center himself.
Maybe Aaron Rodgers is a better coach than a player. Should be coaching more.
Well, he might be
there
soon.
were Jets players who said, and look, when you watch Zach Wilson play, it always felt like he was pressing and he just was trying to do too much, and it looked like he was struggling living up to the hype of being the number 2 overall pick. And everybody in the locker room said he just went out there and was like, whatever, who cares? I've already been benched. Play free.
Multiple times.
And it's one of those things where it's, success breeds confidence and confidence breeds success. What chicken or the egg, what came first? He could have played free and been terrible. Was that actually what it was? But, I mean, if he plays without worrying about losing his job and living up to the hype, who knows? Maybe he has turned a corner. I remain intrigued by Zach Wilson just to see what's going to happen every single week.